but actually utilized higher senses of awareness at that time, And of course, there are graduations in this kind of awareness, where at one level you may be able to look through the walls, At another level you may just see more clearly. You can see the atoms on the ground moving. You can see the different layers, if you like.
It's like you're putting on different glasses.
Yes, yes.
And then you could sort of put on a telescope or a microscope or just like different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's fascinating.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. So wonderful to be with you today. I have the wonderful and fantastic Jurgen Ziewe, who we're going to learn all about today, and we're going to discuss what happens when you die. Let me tell you a little bit. Welcome to the show, Jurgen.
Hello, Karen.
Let me tell you a little bit about Jurgen. Jurgen has been meditating since the 70s and as a consequence spontaneously left his body. He has spent many hundreds of hours in non-physical environments in clear, full waking consciousness, which he chronicles in his diaries. Well, he chronicled in your diaries. You wrote it all down. Ooh, we're going to discuss this. The results being published in his books, Multidimensional Man in 2008 and followed-up book Vistas of Infinity in 2015, which delves deeper into the phenomena of what we may encounter when we leave our earthly bodies. Now, I've been reading Vistas of Infinity. He sent it to me and I've just started reading it and I'm absolutely wrapped. I'm only about 100 pages into the book, and in the first half of the book you explore the lower levels of the astral plane, and so then you obviously move up as you get further into the book. Is that right?
Yes, it's about right. I mean, the main thing was I talked about the more unusual sides of the astral or the afterlife states, which you don't hear a lot about through mediums, because when mediums communicate with people, they usually relate it on a personal level. Mine is more on a general observational level, which is not related to individuals. And the idea behind my books is to create a map, an overall picture of the conditions, and they relate to the psychological aspects of the afterlife state, how our perception is affected, how it's changed, how our life, what happens, and all these sort of phenomena which you don't very often hear about, and that's what Vistas of Infinity in particular is about. But
Your research is extensive and wonderful and beautiful. Oh, it's just amazing. I actually, when I read, works like yours and hear your life journey, I'm amazed at how much information is actually available to us in this dimension, knowing that this dimension is a part of the lower worlds. I hate to use hierarchy, but let's call it denser worlds, because we have this, non-ability to have this awareness of who we really are. And then when I read works like yours, I'm amazed at how much awareness you've been given, and then you're giving that awareness to us as we read your work. And it's like, oh, wow, we've been allowed to have this awareness, because I realized that, having this singular focus in this dimension is part of the play here, the Leela, the experience. So,
yes. Yes, the problem is, of course, because we are totally reliant on our physical senses here, and we everything we take in, we think that's the only reality because we are not used to anything else. The only time we have access is when we go to sleep. But then we get so used to the idea that it's only a dream, But this is actually what nature provides for us as a stepping stone or as a gateway into the non-physical reality. But of course, a lot of it is guided or tinted by our subconscious mind of what we experience. So we don't get a clear picture. We get a washed out picture or a mixed perception of our fantasy world and our expectations and so on, mixed with occasional glimpses of the afterlife state. The difference is when we become fully awake in this state, which is very often described as a lucid dream, then we can filter out the things which come from our subconscious mind and then enter into the alternate reality. The interesting thing is, of course, this reality becomes hyper-lucid, not just, sometimes it's not just that we wake up in our dream state, so to speak, but we are hyper-awake. We are more clear over there than we are in this world. So there's an additional awaking process, which allows us a super lucid state of mind. There's a distinction we have to make between lucid dreaming and out-of-body experience, because lucid dreaming is you're still aware in your dream, you still have the fantasy element added to the mix. But in the true out-of-body state, you are in an alternate reality, which is stripped of these individual fantasy aspects.
Okay. I just want to mention to the people that are watching that Cyrus Kirkpatrick is going to join us in about 40 minutes to join the conversation, because Cyrus, as people who've been watching my shows, knows that he's an extensive astral traveler as well. But just getting back to, he actually posted an article on this on his little Facebook group about lucid dreaming versus astral travel. So astral reality, as I'm understanding it now, as I'm listening to you, is a shared co-creative reality. Because when I'm reading your work, what I'm seeing is, my guide said to me a long time ago, I'm making all of it up. When I was seeing people's past lives and stuff, and I was having all this psychic phenomena, I was asking them, am I making this up? Am I making this up? And they kept saying to me, Karen, you're making all of it up. You're making up that, you're Karen and that you're blonde and that you're this age and that you're doing this. You're making all of it up. And they kept repeating this to me constantly. And so as I read your work, what I realize is we're making it up in all these different dimensions and levels of experiences and levels and different frequencies and different realms and physical realms, or what we perceive as physical. And then so a lucid dream is something that we're making up based on our subconscious sort of programmed thought forms, and it's our little play that we're playing in. Whereas an astral experience is a shared co-creative experience. Would that be more a description of it?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to describe it, the astral experience is almost identical to what we experience here, like the physical world, but it's on a different vibratory level. So it's on a different dimension. But the experience is very, very similar to what we experience here now. It's a
co-creation, we're co-creating.
Yes.
So,
people may build houses over there, the same as we do here. So the reality, the perception of reality is very, very similar to our physical perception of reality here. Whereas in a lucid dream, we are projecting things from our subconscious mind and manifesting it around us. It's a more like a sort of fantasy world, which other people on the astral plane have no access to, But it's a little bit more complicated than that, because sometimes people can project aspects into the astral world, and there's another big subject. There are so many subjects or sub aspects to the astral world. Each one of could be a whole book written about, like, for example, on this level, we can change we change our shape, we age, we have makeovers, go to the hairdresser. The same thing is on the astral level, but much, much more dramatic. Not only can we change our appearance, but we can change, totally how we look, or we can change for example, from a person into an animal if we put our intent to it.
I know. Ooh, I've got so much to say. Okay, so, but depending on the level of awareness and consciousness. So when we die, let's say when we die, we have these infinite, according to you, infinite levels of experiences that we can play in. And some which we perceive as physical and some which are sort of more spiritual, depending on the quality of frequency or vibration, the denseness of vibration. So in the beginning of your book, Vistas of Infinity, you're exploring those denser realms, astral realms, but, we call them astral realms, but those people that are living in those realms, it's their reality, and we are the astral realm, right?
Yes, we are sort of, we are on a totally different dimension.
So it's their reality. And then some of them are, like us, completely convinced that this is all there is, that's all there is, that's the reality. And then they're sort of stuck in their misery, in their miserable thoughts, and they don't know how to get out of it. Look, at reading this, reading you experiencing these people, and then you in your astral body are trying to help them be more positive and raise their vibration so that they can get out of this experience that they're having. I just keep thinking of this, what I do with my clients, like on a daily basis. People believing their stressful thoughts, and then you try and help them raise their frequency, raise their consciousness, and get them out of this experience, because we're experiencing what we're believing to be true.
Yes. I mean, it's not necessarily quite as dramatic. Basically, what I would say, when normal people die, basically they experience more of the same of what they experience here, because that's where their habitual mind is sort of focused on, and that's why I found some people are not even aware that they are dead. For example, I had an experience with a friend of my wife's husband who died of cancer, and I met him when I was out of body, and I said, "Oh, hi, Brian. Nice to see you." He said, "Yes, I hear you have been very ill." He said, "Yes, but I feel a lot better now. I'm getting over it, and it's been a bit of a slog, but I'm getting better now." And he was making a gradual recovery rather than a dramatic, because his mind was still sort of conditioned. And then he simply dismissed the subject and started talking about cars, because that was the only thing we had in common when he was still alive. And so his environment was very, very physical, and he had no idea that anything has changed. So he was still getting used to the idea of his death. If I had told him, he wouldn't have believed me what I had said, And this is the level of ignorance generally with a large part of the population, because they can't imagine, or they have no idea of the afterlife state. They may not be aware that they have died.
Yeah. I saw that in a movie once, and I just didn't think that could be possible. I think it was called The Others, with Nicole Kidman.
Yes, that's a really good film, actually.
Yeah.
Very, very accurate example, because
I just thought it was Hollywood nonsense. Like, how could you not know you're dead? But
Yes.
As you're speaking, because life is a continuum. Like, just when we're asleep, life doesn't cease to continue. Like, life is continuing. So when we're asleep, we're continuing a life in another dimension, or maybe many lives. And just because you cease to continue the life in this reality, you're still living one in another reality. So so I'm just thinking how someone could not know they're dead, because there's this continuum. They don't actually realize that part of that has stopped, because it's just been this continuum of living. So that's how they don't understand they're dead. Is that how it would be?
Yes. Also, there's a change in consciousness. For example, we take it is almost as our critical faculty has changed. You know, we very quickly get used to phenomena which we wouldn't find acceptable on this level. For example, let's say on the next level, we want to have a cup of tea, and suddenly, without going to putting the kettle on and doing it, we suddenly have a cup of tea. When this happens on the astral level, we just don't question it. We take it as a given, that this is a natural thing, the way things should happen. You know, so we make a perceptual jump very naturally, and the things which you think, hang on a minute, that is really odd, that should give you a distinct idea that you're not, that is not real or not physical. But we don't. We become less critical. We just accept it as our new given reality. Is
that because we join the collective consciousness of that experience or that dimension? Like, when we're in a collective experience now, and we have these collective agreements that you know, when you touch the stove it's hot, and you know, something tastes, you know, everything's like a collective agreement, isn't it? So we have a shared reality where it's sort of, even though each thing we experience is different, because what I perceive is different to what you perceive, there is a shared reality because we have these collective agreements, so that we don't question.
That's right. But I mean, of course, people like you and me, and people who are more aware of the different states of consciousness, they're very aware that they had a previous life, and that this is a new life, and then and the people who communicate through mediums, you know, they're very well aware that they have moved on. They're very well aware that they the relatives are on a physical level still, you know. And I don't know whether you have seen The Sixth Sense. With, that's a typical example. The main actor, what was his name? Bruce Willis.
Oh, right,
he didn't peg that he was dead.
Yeah.
You know?
Now you've just you've spoiled the end. that's the cruncher at the end. Yeah, what do you call it? The twist at the end.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's dead, and he doesn't know, and he's living his life as if. Yeah, I know. So that's brilliant. I love that movie. It's a brilliant movie, and I love the message in the movie too, because the little boy who's so scared, you know, realizes that there's nothing to be scared of. They're just people crying out for help. You know, they might seem scary to him because they're living a different reality, but they're just people that are just asking for his help. Yeah. So, and again, spoiler alert. We just ruined the movie for anyone who hasn't seen it.
So there's some movies actually which are very accurate, you know, which we can take as a learning tool to get a little bit of a better understanding. The Others is one of them, which I found that's really quite good. Somebody who was advising the film director obviously had a great insight. So was The Sixth Sense, you know. So these are quite good examples of what the reality is like, you know.
Well, what the reality can be like, because I know with Cyrus, and we'll discuss this.
Can be like.
You know, there are a lot of people talking about life after death, near-death experience, what happens when you die, mediums, people that have had near-death experiences. I've spoken to many who do go to a spiritual world or out-of-body travelers that is very blissful, very beautiful, and obviously you've experienced those realms as well. And so there's this perception that when you die, there's this one place called heaven. It's one place that we all go to. And really what your experiences explore is that we are the creators of our reality, and this is one reality that we are co-creating. And when we leave this reality, we're still creating our reality. And so this brings up this heaven and hell experience that some people have, that they can go to dance. My ex-husband was a Hare Krishna, and he read in the book Conversation with God, all religion is based in fear. And he said, all but mine, my religion is not based in fear. And then we went to a Hare Krishna event, and they were playing out all their plays, like a nativity play at Christmas. They were doing the plays from the books. And he had this realization that all of it was based in fear. And then we went home and discussed it, and he said, depending on your sin in this life, you go to different hells, but there's not just one hell. There are many different hell planets, he said. And on each planet, there's a different punishment. And so very much there were these rules and regulations you have to follow, or you're going to go to this hell planet and be and so I was reminded of that as I was reading these astral experiences that you experienced in the denser realms, of these people that were creating a reality based on their negative thoughts and their thoughts of guilt and fear and resentment and hatred. They were creating these sort of hideous experiences based on these thoughts. So do you want to talk about that?
Yes, I mean, I wouldn't personally call it planets, but it's a metaphor, of course, he used, because what they do, these are really quite big environments, big worlds we then fall into. In Vistas of Infinity, I described the waiter I mentioned in one of the episodes, who came out of a very dark place, which was an endless place. He couldn't, no matter how far he walked, he could never get out of it, because the whole environment was just a reflection of his state of consciousness. And there was no getting away from it until he changed his state of consciousness. And the guide who took him out of it helped him to open up his consciousness. And this seemed to be a very lengthy process. But as he was telling me it all happened in a flash. I perceived the whole story.
Just like a download, just
very quickly. And when I wrote it down, it took me hours to write it down in a sequential way, which made sense. And this is a curious phenomena of the reality as it is experienced. For some people, when they get to these hellish realms, that may feel like a century. Okay.
Right.
Whereas for the observer who actually sees them, there's just a short time or just one event. But this is where the time element totally collapses, and the world which we constructed here out of a physical planet suddenly becomes an infinite environment which can change from one state into another very, very quickly, and this is what we down here on Earth find so difficult to understand, how reality can shift, how the environments, how the worlds can shift, and yet we think, oh, where's all the space? What is taking place? How can this be? But these are all states of consciousness, and that is so difficult to comprehend from our earthly perspective, But it all makes total sense once we step into the world and become familiar with it, and then find ways to navigate this place,
Well, I mean, my mandate in this lifetime is to, activate and support and help the New World teachers, but also to teach how we create our reality. I call it deliberate creation. And we perceive this reality through how we feel. So once we change our feelings, we're having a different reality. We're completely experiencing a different reality. So I do it with, friends, family, clients all the time. They'll be in this state of anxiety where the world looks dark and everything is wrong and nothing's going right and I hate my life and woe's me. And then in an instant, you can show them how to look at it differently, and then everything's sunny again. And then telephone calls start happening and job offers come in and just things can change on the head of a pin. Like you can shift your reality.
Yes, absolutely true.
Yeah.
My wife is a counselor. She works on this sort of level, to shift people's perception, to look at things, to lose their fears and all these sort of things. What you just said, it's really everything is in the mind, but we have this consensus here that is out there. It's a reality is out there,
exactly.
And so we draw the experiences, the external experiences towards us because of our state of mind.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I've written down a whole lot of things. One thing, what happens when we die? One could define, this was you talking to your mother, I think, on an astral world. One could define the afterlife in one sentence, your mother said. The place you will live in after you die is a manifestation of your inner life, she said. So that's what you were saying. And then what else did I write? You were talking about here afterlife states are numerous as human beings and as complex. The most important thing we will have to recess and probably shake off is a widely held belief that our afterlife will magically change everything and reset all our parameters. Individual reports by near-death experiences and channelers, mediums are very specific and will almost certainly never apply to ourselves. Some of the medium reports I found were very confirmative of what I've experienced. There is still a rather romantic view that at the end of our life, our suffering will come to an end and we will live in internal peace. Rest in peace is a fallacy which has been implicated in us from an early childhood, mainly as a result of ignorance of our inability to look beyond the great curtain. When people proclaim at funeral services, well, at least now he or she is at peace. Mostly this is not the case unless the deceased was already at peace at the time of death. What in fact happens is that nothing changes, and at the same time, everything changes in some way. This is something that Cyrus harps on about all the time too. He gets really angry when people talk about like everyone's going to heaven and angels and harps are playing and it's all beautiful and lush. But many religious doctrine have talked about the level of your consciousness at death determines what happens when you die, like your afterlife experience. But at the same time, your higher self is always, in an afterlife experience.
Yes, and it's always there around you all the time.
Yeah,
yes.
That aspect of you that is always in that bliss and unconditional love. So there's just an aspect of you that's experiencing this life and then those other lives. But I guess that's a quality of awareness, isn't it?
Yes, I always refer to it as our identification, what we identify with, that becomes our life, When you do regular meditation, you shift away from the negative aspect and the love aspect, the positive aspect becomes more predominant.
Yeah.
So then your life changes, first of all, and then you also move astrally, for example, if you die into much more pleasant environments, until you have until the identification with the emotional aspects or the individual aspects sort of changes altogether, and you suddenly become aware of the bliss aspect and that is where many people get the experience of homecoming, because that's where they feel they really, really belong, their true self. And the experience is it feels like home. This is where I belong. You know, there's no outside world anymore. Everything is right here. Everything is beautiful. Everything is safe and secure and is blissful. And that's when we unite with our true self, our higher self. And then, of course, when we get into this kind of state of mind, our reality is totally transformed. Then we can enter worlds which we are unable to even find words for.
Imagine. You know? And I know that you've been to a lot of those worlds, and you've got these videos on YouTube of some of your art, because you're an artist. Didn't say that in your bio. And you've tried to sort of show these vistas of these beautiful, glistening, sparkling, crystal-like worlds that we can't even imagine. But, you know, as I think about people that are talking about how beautiful heaven is, especially near-death experiences, as this information is flooding our internet, and it is, people that are dying, and which is everybody, it'll be everybody, kind of are given this vista. And so they can, it's sort of like they're given it so that they can go there. Do you know what I mean? Because if we're creating our reality and we believe that heaven is this lofty place, then if we believe that, because that's how we create our reality, then that's where we'll go. When
and it's actually quite a simple step, really, if we change our attitude. And the simple thing is basically nurturing love.
Yeah.
Okay. Love is a bedrock of reality. There's no getting away from it. If we focus on that, you know, in our daily action and our life, and sort of are a little bit more forgiving when we are hard done by, and always remember the hard aspect of everything, and also realize that the people we meet in our life, they are coming from the same place. So we are all really related, you know. And then work with this feeling coming from the heart, talking with the heart, thinking with the heart, acting with the heart. It's not a difficult route to take. You know, we are just so hung up on our habits, on our addictions, you know, that we find it so hard.
Habits are so easy to form. I just watch myself forming patterns. These patterns, you talk about that too in the book, how we can kind of create a pattern and then just sort of get locked into it. I once read a book called, don't ask me what the name was, but the story in the book was about this monastery, and the monk used to come down and sit at the same place every day for breakfast and get the same plate and the same mug, and he just started to create, and the head of the monk, you know, the guru in the monastery, smashed his favorite mug, and so he came down to breakfast, he's like, where's my mug, and it was just talking about how you've got to shake yourself out of these habits, you know, and he was just demonstrating that you're kind of in this hypnosis of being remote controlled, you know, by these habits that we have. And we get so locked into a reality like that.
Yes. I think a successful life consists of a continuous stream of letting go, you know, because once you are able to do that, don't hang on to things, you're entering the reality of the present moment, you know, and that's where the happiness lies. You know? And that's where we always have to come back to. And, you know, the moment is the doorway to the reality of what persists, you know. And that's difficult. That's why I always advocate meditation, because that allows us to break the mold and take control of it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I want to get into a couple of your experiences in the book. I wanted you to talk about, I'm just putting down, because I've taken all these excerpts out of the book, like I could just read the whole book really. What makes out-of-body experiences so immensely powerful is the fact that wakeful awareness is no longer tied to the physical body. And with this awareness liberated and no longer burdened by the running of our heavy physical machinery, it can be placed at any point in time and space, in the past or in a completely different dimensional level. We can live an alternative life with the same or even greater level of awareness or than our physical life has to offer. All the time we are still who we are, retaining our full sense of identity. There is no limit to what this me can experience, the place it can visit without attachment to the physical body. We enter a world of continuity, can't say that word, I said it a million times before, where no ends are in sight, no limits, in a place, and soon find that we can visit and speak to family members who have died before, and there will not be a shadow of doubt that we are speaking to the actual person we have loved and known, all the while knowing that our body is still in the place where we left it, either on the couch or in bed. So you did this with your mum. You went and saw your mum, and she was this young girl, and you were thinking, so strange to be with mum as a young girl, because, you know, I don't remember her ever as a young girl. Because
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it was, I think, must have been her wicked sense of humor, but she came into my, when I was out of body, she approached me with my aunt, and they were like teenagers in a very fashionable teenage dress. But I recognized her despite her incredible disguise, because it was her, what I call the muttiness, the mumness of her.
The mutti, German mutti mother,
I called her mutti, you know. The essential her just was still abundantly there. You know, no matter what disguise she had chosen, when I hugged her, it was her, the way I always remembered her. You know, that distinctive feeling just doesn't get lost. And this is a subject which came up with Cyrus. You know, Cyrus gets very angry when people talk about getting dissolving into nothingness. You know, which is absurd. We don't dissolve. And
well, you can if you want to, if that's what you choose. I mean, like, if that's what you want to go, if that's, you know, that's what you can.
But we don't disappear. That's what I'm saying. Nothing in reality ever disappears.
Yeah.
We may not be able to see it, you know, but it just doesn't work. You know, reality hasn't got a mechanic in place where things disappear forever. You know, that's a big concept we have to get used to, because and also it's very, very difficult to explain, you know.
Because we're so identified in this reality. So people have talked about that me-ness is our soul stamp, our soul identity, where it's recognizable even when we're wearing a different body. Like, your mother was a young girl, but you could have seen her as a young boy or a child. Like, when you went, you saw your dad who had reincarnated, and and he was a young Russian boy. He was a boy. Could have been a girl, I guess. And did you have that same recognition of the muttiness? You know, that sort of that when you were witnessing him as a young boy in another life.
I instantly recognized him, and the curious thing was, in his mind, he was riding the bicycle. He stopped in this farmyard, and he was thinking, and I could read his thought, and he was thinking Jurgen, you know. So on a subconscious level, he still recognized me, although. I was sort of 50 years older or 60 years older from the last time he saw me, you know.
But hang on. You were in your astral form.
Yes.
So you were looking for your father in the astral realm, and you found him incarnated into an earth realm.
Mm.
I don't know what time frame it was. Was it a future, past?
No, it was, I think, around about 2009 or so.
Right.
At that time, he was just about 10, 11 years old.
So it was this time frame. He had reincarnated into this.
Yes.
So you could, at that time, if you wanted to, go to that place in Russia and meet your physical body, could meet his physical body.
Yes. That's a good point, really, because I actually use Google Earth and try to find. I had a vague idea of the locality. It was in somewhere in eastern Russia, but not too far from western Russia. It was somehow in the middle. I had a picture of where it would be, so I used Google Earth and tried to zoom in and see if there was any landmark I could recognize. But it didn't. It wasn't very successful. The experience was relatively short, and there was also the emotional aspect to it, which was quite intense, and also the reunion, the recognition. Although externally there was nothing to recognize. My father, the way I knew him, he wore glasses. He was an adult male. He always had this sort of smart suit on, and there was this young boy on a bicycle, totally different, but there was a distinct recognition. That's a point.
I'm just going to admit Cyrus has just jumped online, so that went so quickly. Talking to you, there he is.
Hi, Cyrus.
Yes, we'll just wait to get his. He's in the Philippines at the moment to get his audio working. Okay, so when you were in your astral form and you witnessed your father as a 10-year-old boy in Russia, you could see him. How did you see him? You were standing, on the grass next to him, like a ghostly figure, or?
No, I could actually see the whole physical world. I could, not only could I see the whole physical world, the farmyard, I also saw his brother a little bit further away. I recognized that his brother was actually his father when he was alive on Earth.
Right.
So not only did I have the physical perception, but I also had another additional perception of the relationships. And as I was looking at the physical side of it, I was also aware that his mother was in the kitchen of the house. Although,
so how were you looking at? Well, Cyrus wouldn't know this too. Welcome. We've got you. Oh, there you go. You're mute. Hi, Cyrus.
Hello, Karen. Hello, Jurgen.
Hi, Cyrus. Nice to see you finally and talk to you.
So we're just talking about Jurgen's experience with his dad. Have you read the book Vistas of Infinity?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the part where he experiences his dad has reincarnated in a physical life and Jurgen's in his astral, his out-of-body experience. And he's witnessing this other physical life. So you were witnessing this physical life like a person who has a near-death experience would witness, or a dead person would witness a physical life. But how does it sort of open up like a screen, or is it just like a knowing in your mind? How do you witness it?
Well, first of all, it's just like seeing the physical world, but there's an additional component attached to it, which is a knowingness. So simultaneously, you have access to a wider knowledge. Okay, so that's how I recognized his brother as his physical father when he was still alive. My father's parents died when he was 2 years old.
Right.
So there was a lifelong desire in him to recreate a family. And then when he died, he was sort of ripped out of his family life. So he assembled his original family in this life. So his father, who he never really got to know, appeared in the form of his brother but his mother was still his mother. So there was a new permutation of relationship, but there was like I just explained, you still relate to the person, and become recognized, like I recognize my mother. There's still this sort of feeling of familiarity there, so it doesn't really matter if people reincarnate or not. There's still a connection.
Yeah, there's a continuity. So when you're in your astral body, as you've said, you have more awareness or more. Do you find that as well, Cyrus, that when you're in your astral body, you have more knowing, more awareness than you do it? Because, okay, so here's the thing. So my mother has reincarnated. She died when I was 16, and she's now an adult. So I've watched her grow up. But her family around her, most of them don't believe. I've told them that she's mum. They don't relate to her as they don't have that recognition. But they're in their physical body, right? So it's different when you're in your astral body.
Right. So first, I apologize if we hear too much construction around me. It seems like every time I do a webinar or interview, there's always construction outside of a window. I would say yes. In my experiences, if I am astral projecting into the astral dimension, then there is this kind of what we would call the sixth sense becomes like a normal sense to people on that side. So you don't just see things, you can also feel things. You can also get a sense of information, kind of like an information download when you are interacting with people. And it happens automatically, and it can happen at subtle levels. So we do it here to a very small extent, like if you get a bad feeling about somebody you just met. So if you do, if you're like me, you do it very with, like I cannot look at anybody without getting the whole story. Exactly. So yes. So, the thing is that on a limited out of body experience is great, but we can actually have that awareness while in the body. That's, like it's all very well talking about getting out of your body to have these experiences, but you can bring that back into the body. You can bring that sort of awareness and experience into the body as well. Yes, and so I guess the best way that I can describe it is here it is an undeveloped ability, but if you are in the astral dimension, then it just happens naturally. And it interferes with an interaction. It's more like you meet somebody and you have a very solid idea about who and what they are, maybe up to including specific details. All just kind of comes in. I notice this happens less if I am having what I call kind of like a near-Earth astral experience, where I just come out of my body, I go into my house, I spy on a roommate. Right. I'm not quite so tuned in that sense, but if I have an astral experience where my consciousness merges back into my astral self, who is leading a life on the astral side, it's as if at that point, my mind is already preconditioned enough to have that ability very strongly. But if I pop out of my body in my bedroom and walk around the house, I don't have it quite so much. It's much more similar to how we interact right now. But I think that in the astral plane, the real astral plane, we have these heightened abilities, yes. Okay, so at the beginning of your book, Jurgen, you talk about your first experience where you're meditating in deep meditation, and then you're walking along a beach. And you're having this lovely experience of feeling the beauty of the beach, and you actually don't even realize you're having an out-of-body experience in that moment until you do. What happened to make you know that you were having an out-of-body experience? Well,
the key point was that I wondered how I got there, because I couldn't remember where I parked the car, because the beach was sort of 16 miles from where I lived. And then I sort of tried to think. I looked around and thought, there's no way I remember parking it anywhere near here. And then it gradually dawned on me that I must have an out-of-body experience. Then I did the test of lifting off the ground and hovering. And then later, a little bit later, I remembered that I was actually meditating, and my body was in the chair, and there was I made this jump onto the Brighton beach, and it felt absolutely real, very, very physical. The only thing I did notice was everything was very, very luminous, very, very much enhanced.
Okay, that was the next question.
Yeah, it was almost as if the physical perception is almost like a filter, which like frosted glass, if you like,
Exactly.
And if that falls away, your perceptions become much more vivid and much more alive. I mean, I used to do that a lot, getting up at sunrise after meditation and walk along the beach, and you have got a heightened sense of awareness. So it didn't feel that unusual when it happened during an out-of-body state, But it's another very interesting phenomena.
So when you're just jumping out of your body and waking up in your living room, and you're looking at your body asleep on the couch or in the bed or in your bedroom, whatever, because you're perceiving through your astral body, I guess, I don't know how it works. So you're not perceiving through your physical apparatus called your eyes and ears and taste and touch and everything. Obviously things would look different, like you said, that everything was more because I have had this experience where I was coming back into my body and on the way in I could see through all the walls, and I saw my daughter waking up in another room. So everything was transparent and translucent as well. Like everything was transparent when I wasn't looking through my physical eyes. Is that what you experience as well, or is it looking all very solid?
I think there are so many different levels of perception.
Right.
I remember when in my student days, I used to take LSD.
Right.
That was a sort of almost like a fashion at the time. You had to do it if you're an art student, But that was a very interesting experience where I felt I could look through the ground. And I thought, how is it possible? But I actually utilized higher senses of awareness at that time, And of course, there are graduations in this kind of awareness, where at one level you may be able to look through the walls, At another level you may just see more clearly. You can see the atoms on the ground moving. You can see the different layers, if you like.
It's like you're putting on different glasses.
Yes.
And then you can sort of put on a telescope or a microscope or just like different.
Yes.
Fascinating.
What do you think, Cyrus?
What do you think, Cyrus?
Hi. Well, yes. I mean, I concur. I think that there was something I was about to say that came to my mind. Yes, it was about kind of natural landscapes, because I think my most vivid memories when I was having my best astral experiences roughly 2 years ago is natural landscapes, because you feel, I can definitely relate to what Jurgen talks about in his books, almost like merging with the environment. Like you feel the grass, you feel the sky, you feel the nature, like you really absorb into it. And the best way to describe this, it's a very pleasant or adventurous sensation, like you can be in an astral desert landscape, or a forest, or something like that. But here we just look at it and then we can appreciate the beauty. But there, it's like you feel the emotion and the rhythm of the environment so well. So some of my best memories here in this physical life are actually memories of the astral side of some of these environments, because when you experience the full emotion and all the energy of the environment, it sticks into your memory much better than if you're having a normal experience on this plane. Just looking at a pretty picture, the lovely forest, the lovely ocean. Well, that's very nice. It's a lot different when you can really encompass the whole experience, which you're able to do on the higher planes, which you can do as well here if you become more talented at becoming receptive to the energies around you. I think that's a skill that takes some work to develop, and most people don't necessarily have that. But I believe on the astral side, it's kind of automatic.
So who do you think is, I just looked at the clock, 5:55. Who do you think is orchestrating what we experience while we're in body. So you've got your experience, Cyrus, which is different to Jurgen's experience, and I don't have any. Well, I've astral traveled plenty of time, but I don't have any deliberate. Like, I can't do it deliberately. I wake up every morning trying to remember where I've been at night, and pretty much fails me most mornings. I sometimes remember these odd dreams, and sometimes I have very prophetic dreams, and sometimes very vivid memories, and then often not. So who's orchestrating all that? And who's orchestrating the levels of awareness that you visit too? Jurgen, maybe.
I over the last sort of few years, I come to rely on an aspect of awareness which is not a personal identification, but at the same time it feels like my real me, you know. So very often I allow myself to this aspect to take over and surrender to it, and it inevitably takes me to places which are relevant to me, you know. So I've become to rely on it so much that I even no longer feel motivated to have an out-of-body experience, because this aspect of awareness is constantly around me, you know. It sort of tells me or guides me what to look at, what is important, you know. So you become a bit more like the hands and the eyes of this aspect of awareness, you know, and everything becomes more organic and more natural, and the conflict element of this type of awareness totally sort of dissolves, you know. And you are in a state of being, you know, in a here and now state where you just move along automatically, but completely aware of what is going on, and you have got a clear perception of what's happening around you, you know. So I allow things like that take place automatically. Very often, for example, before an interview like this, I sometimes can set an intent to have an out-of-body experience, so I've still got a fresh experience, but I didn't bother with that last night, because I knew the situation would unfold quite naturally in a way which was just right, you know, to
so
what
you
we
sort
are
of tuned
talking
into
about.
what would happen.
You
would, as Jamie Butler would say, you were doing your cheat sheet where you can tune into what's going to happen, and you go, oh, okay, I got this. Yeah. So that's fascinating. So you're
it's less
merging more with your higher self. Is that what you're saying? Like, you're sort of letting go of ego identity of Jurgen, this age, and you're merging more with the aspect of you that is the oversoul, the higher self, which is orchestrating this whole.
Yes, I mean, originally when it first sort of came into my awareness, I always referred to it as my silent companion. You know, there was an aspect of awareness which almost felt like another person walking beside me, you know. So there was already a link to this awareness, and I recognized it. That was very, very familiar, very close to me, you know. And I think very often when people talk about guardian angel, basically they talk about themselves, you know, their higher selves.
Absolutely.
But this silent companion is actually who I really am. But my identification is sort of deviated from it and is focused on other things. So I never really fully appreciate myself, you know. And then the breakthrough came when I went on a week-long retreat in 2013 in Scotland, when suddenly this silent companion no longer was a separate thing, but I suddenly remembered, hang on a minute, it's me. That's me. That has been me all along. It was like a recall. And I suddenly think, oh, all right, you know, that's simple, so I just have to be me. And then of course things become a lot easier in life, and simpler and more natural, so you're less conflict oriented, you're more able to let things go, because there's nothing really that can happen to you,
Yeah,
because
nothing matters because nothing is matter. Nothing matters. Yeah. Cyrus, have you had that experience? You look like you're reading. What are you reading?
Reading the screen. I have that experience. I mean, interestingly, like, I suppose I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle, maybe a less developed angle. But when I have an astral experience, I do believe to an extent it is self-generated, or rather the experience happens as a result of my own intention, which, is kind of what Jurgen is saying as well, because in his sense, it's being directed by his higher self, but higher self is still self. So maybe I just have less of a connection to the quote unquote higher self, or maybe I have a very nice connection to it, and that's why I don't notice it because I already am operating in that way. I don't know. But when I have an astral experience, what tends to happen is it occurs because I set the intention the night before. So a lot of times I just want to sleep. And sometimes I'll have like very unusual dreams, which are usually a signal that an astral experience could have happened that night had I set the intention. So if I have a dream that I'm around very vivid, very specific characters, and it doesn't seem like it's anything that's in my imagination, then this is what I may call an astral dream. And basically I'm having experiences on that side. And once all the data, all the information comes back to my physical brain, it gets scrambled up a little bit, and my brain interprets it as having been a dream.
Right.
On the other, if the night prior I set the intention that I will have an astral experience, then if all goes well, then what would have normally been a kind of scrambled dream suddenly becomes a real vivid experience on that side. So very much like
fascinating.
There's a self-directed process for me.
Self-directed.
And certainly I've had experiences where I have been guided into that state by a literal other power, like an individual who lives on that side, a quote-unquote guide, or somebody along those lines who decided, hey, I want Cyrus to see this and this tonight. And that's happened to me a couple of times, but that's not so common. That's the exception. Most of the time it is quite a self-directed process, at least for me.
Yeah, Jurgen, you said the same thing about you felt, as you kept having these experiences, that it was all being guided. Like you were being shown these vistas of infinity. And you call yourself not a teacher, but a reporter. So it's like you were being guided to experience them so you could come back to this reality and report on them, what you experienced, what you saw, who was there, how you interacted. So so our higher self or guides, because I think of my higher self as a stream of consciousness, which is not a singular soul as we think of, our soul, but as a stream of consciousness. Because if we could imagine that we've lived many lives, and all those, the higher self is a combination of all that experience, then there's so many different things we've experienced on so many different levels of reality that combine in this stream of consciousness that we call our higher self. And so is that how you experience it?
Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, that's a good metaphor, the stream of consciousness, because the stream of consciousness, or the sea of consciousness, perhaps, it's which allows us to focus on any kind of aspect, which could be a past life, past life on a different planet. It could be another person. We have the ability as this ocean of consciousness to tune into the individual wavelets, which is all an aspect of us. But there's a distinct link of the feeling of our individuality of what is us, what makes us us. You know, the particular experience of the Jurgen aspect, which has been in action for I don't know how long, but there's a distinct thread going through which we can follow, you know, into the past and into past lives, and we will always recognize ourselves as Jurgen, although I may have had a different name in the past life, but I'm very aware of what I am, and also in this life I experienced aspects of what I have been in a past life, which could have been a quite a sort of selfish, nasty entity, you know, and this shows itself up, and you think, oh, what's this feeling come from? You know, what is this all about? You know, and sometimes I was taken back into a past life where I was representing this aspect to its extreme, you know,
Right.
and there's still a reflection of it there now in this life, and then you have to work with it. You have to transmute it or understand it or purify it until it's no longer a block which prevents you from becoming the awareness of the stream of consciousness, you know, to experience your complete potential, you know. So these things are very useful to understand, you know, and the stream of consciousness, of course, is what we are.
Yeah. So, you know, that begs the question I have in my mind with everything that I talk about on the show is like, why talk about out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences? How does that help us in this experience? Because that's who I'm talking to, because we're in this experience. But that's what you're saying. As I read the book, you know, what I notice is that law of attraction is working on every level of experience, just in different time frames. So a thought creates our reality in every level of experience, but the time in which our thought creates reality is varied in different levels of experience. And almost playing in those realities where a thought is manifest almost instantly helps you tune up your focus in this reality, doesn't it? Because we can get so lazy because time, that buffer of time, you know, we have a negative thought and then we kind of chew on it for a while because we're right. You know, we're going to hold on to how we're right about being upset about something. And then you don't see how that manifests instantly here. And then the shit hits the fan and you go, oh, I'm a victim of this. But in fact, it's you've been chewing on sort of negative stuff for a while. So that's how these experiences help us in this reality, right? So we get to experience that stream of consciousness. We get to see our powers of creation. What would you say about that, Cyrus? Is that how you feel about your experiences out of body?
Well, I think what you are describing is a difference between the earth physical plane and the astral physical plane. And it's that the more solid the realm is, that the more there is a delay or a buffer between thought and reality. But this is not to say that the astral plane is a place where you just, anything that stray thought that comes to your mind, suddenly Bugs Bunny's jumping out of your head and hop the place, you know? Maybe there are certain mental planes where that is in fact the case, but certainly in the astral planes that I've been to and that Jurgen has been to, if you think of something, it doesn't just pop up immediately. But there are elements that are much different than here, in the sense that, especially in regard to our physical appearances on the astral, because I think this is what our mind is the most connected to. So a being in a very negative mood will affect your physical appearance.
Right.
If you feel on the inside, you feel very old, then sure enough, on the astral plane, that you will look like an older person. But if you feel young at heart, you feel happy, you feel it bouncing around, then you will manifest younger. And people on the astral sometimes don't understand why they still look old, but they require a little bit of the psychiatric counseling to figure out why inside they feel that way. And once they fix that, their physical appearance will begin to change. So that is the difference that I see. And here we are stuck into a very slow process of physicality. And on the astral, it's significantly higher, but it doesn't go away. there is still physicality. And then you can go into kind of mental planes that some esoteric literature talks about, where literally everything you think is just happening all around you.
Right.
Those aren't places that I've personally been to, so I can't really talk about those with any authority. But the astral side, physicality is sped up in a sense from this dimension. I don't know, Jurgen, do you resonate with any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think exactly, you described it really well. It's not just that. I made a very interesting observation when I visited artists painting, and I described in one of the chapters. They got so identified with their work that they started taking on the appearance of their drawing. So one person looked sort of like more cubist, and that was a startling observation. But as soon as they became aware of me observing them, they instantly came back to their normal shape. This is something I found really interesting, how people's emotions and feelings affect their appearance. How they how they can, and also one thing I studied was the metamorphosis taking place. This always comes up in occult literature, that people shapeshifters and things like that. Now on the astral level, it's a very quick thing and can be a very instant thing that we can perform, changing our appearance, and it's quite fascinating.
Well, like Cyrus always says that he looks like a teenager, and he's like the grand old age of 32. I love that. Anyway, but you talk about that, but I actually believe that we do that here too. And but we have these really strong beliefs and thought forms about age. And I've indulged, you hit 50 and you start saying, oh, I'm so old, and we start really buying into what we're supposed to be like at 50. And it's just, people talk about it, and you get creaky and your limbs hurt, and this happens when you get older, and when you get older, and when you get old. And it's so, we're marinating in these beliefs that it's kind of hard to swim out of them. But when I first started putting my knob on camera about 3 years ago, I looked older than I do today. So we can actually regress age by thinking differently, like feeling younger, like you say, feeling younger. And like Cyrus talked about, and having more, I think the thing that keeps you young is a questioning mind, that sense of wonder and curiousness, like that sense of, what else is possible? Like the child, the curiousness of a child who meets everything, like the taste of a new, food with with this sense of wonder. I think that really keeps you young. What do you think, boys?
Yeah. I talk about this a bit in my upcoming book called The Afterlife and Beyond, where I talk about what I call elementalism, which is the ability to really enjoy an experience by meditating on the feeling that an experience, a person, or even an object gives you. And I do believe that this is something that a lot of children do innately, and people definitely forget about this as they get older. And I do believe that, like what you said, I know people who, maybe it's like a little bit of my own sixth sense, but like depending on their mood, they physically look a lot different.
Yeah.
Really notice people I've known. And I do think that there's an element of astral physics that are affecting the world a little bit. And it's one more thing I want to add, and this was an observation that I've had on, going onto the astral side, about the way that our mind affects our personal appearances and the physical environment, is that affecting our own physical appearance is very much something that is our right to do. So if we want to shapeshift, like Jurgen talks about, or we want to change into a different age, this is all our own business. But I find using your mind to affect the objective environment that is shared by other people, this is number one, it does not occur so easily.
Right.
And if it does occur, it may not necessarily be something that people will want you to do.
Say that again? That who wants you to do?
People necessarily will want you to do. I've heard it referred a bit as practicing magic, in the sense that you decide, I'm going to go take that tree and turn it into a donut, or whatever it might be. If you want to really affect and shape the objective environment shared by other people, you may literally find yourself getting in trouble because, well, number one, it's not very easy to do, but if we're able to do that, you don't necessarily have the right to go somebody's backyard and mess it up. So there is an interesting political component that we affect the environment with our minds in these higher density dimensions. So.
Yes, that's interesting, because I actually made a test with my daughter. For a period, she had out-of-body experiences, and I tried to go into consensus environment and try out to see how far I could change things, And I did find that although I was affecting temporarily the environment, very soon when my attention drifted, it changed back to how it was before. And I think it reverted back to a inbuilt memory of the consensus perception of the people who co-created the environment.
This was an astral environment.
I asked my daughter. Yeah. Yes. So I asked my daughter to test it. So in one out-of-body experience, she said she found a fountain and there was a figurine, and she changed it into another figurine. But as soon as she stopped focusing on it, it changed back into what it was before. So we have got a limited power of affecting our environment, but the energy of the consensus of other people and what they're used to in the astral city, for example, the program is so strong that it will sort of maintain the place the way it was.
Okay, well, as I said before, so that would apply to this reality as well. To change this reality that we live in, this third dimension physical construct, we have to get a consensus. We have to have a consensus, like what we're doing, what all the light weavers or light workers of this planet are doing are trying to shift the level of awareness and level of consciousness on this planet. And as more and more people bombard this world with love messages and these sorts of messages that we're putting out with the show, the consensus, is shifting. Like the consensus was nothing happens when you die. And yet there's so many people having these sorts of conversations and near-death experiences, and that the consensus is shifting. So when the consensus agrees, we'll have a different reality, right? Here? Is that?
Yeah, I think what is so powerful is when, for example, like Cyrus coming onto the show. During the past conversation, what I found the most important thing is the level of agreement, and also I'm very keen. Of course, we are in different countries, but we both know rain, we both know cities and so on, although they may appear different to us, but there's a consensus on the generality of that an afterlife not only exists, but it has a consistency and a reality which applies to everybody. And the more people come out and report their experiences, and that's why I was so keen to be a reporter, to report it, so that other people can read it and can say, oh yes, that's exactly how I experienced it,
Yeah.
and every so often on the astral travel forums, I send out an experience, and then people will say, oh yes, this happened to me too. So we find these are not made up things in our mind or a fantasy. And this consensus we build up amongst us is in a way a kind of scientific confirmation that other realities exist,
Exactly.
That's a very valuable, important aspect of it.
Have you got to go? Sorry. No.
I want to just jump in and add something before my thought disappeared, which was that on the topic of consensus in terms of being able to modify the environment when you're in an astral condition, I actually believe that there are two factors from what I've been told, in addition to what Jurgen said. So the one factor is the consensus of the people in the environment, which will keep the statue from becoming a magazine or whatever you want to change it into. But the second factor is really the consensus created by the natural environment, because a natural environment, like anything, is also conscious.
Mm-hmm.
And on the astral side, there is an abundance of nature. So say you walk into a forest and you cannot change the stream to be made of bubblegum. But it's not necessarily that it may be a remote piece of forest. You know, it may not have people there affecting and changing the consensus of that forest, but it's held in place by the consciousness or the thoughts of that nature environment. So but there's those two different elements. So yes, you can go into a place of nature, but it's not going to be modified so easily either, even if there's not people around it. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, that makes total sense. Yeah, absolutely.
So the consensus of the consciousness of the natural world, that those beings, because they are beings, they are souls, I suppose, be it plant life or whatever, animals, they have their own consensus. But again, once the consensus meets a critical mass, then everything shifts, right? So this is what's kind of frustrating to people that have been talking about out-of-body experiences and life after death and different, like all this whole conversation, spiritual conversation, to the consensus of the skeptical mind that says, that's a whole lot of hooey. Once enough people have this agreement that this is a reality, the consciousness, this critical mass shifts. And what's really crazy is that these people who didn't believe it in 1 minute, all of a sudden start believing it as their truth. And then when you say to them, but yesterday you didn't believe, they say, I never not believed. They kind of don't remember. It's like that doesn't exist anymore. It's like you shift timelines, or it's, it's like you edit the timeline. Have you found
Yes, it's like when they discovered that the Earth was a sphere,
Right.
Suddenly everybody found, it's obvious, it's logical.
I always
couldn't be
believed
anything else.
Yeah.
And they suddenly dismiss the idea that they at one point thought it was flat, because it's just such overwhelming evidence now that it becomes the reality of it becomes established in the consciousness of, which is basically we are all part of. It just, as you said, it has the tipping point, where it becomes accepted. And I think that's what is happening by people getting together and saying, this is how it is. It's quite natural, and gradually it shifts and people will accept it eventually.
Exactly. So we've been going for about an hour and a half. I think, have you two got anything that you'd like to share with each other? Because I don't think you've had a public conversation before, have you?
No.
We did a joint presentation at the Afterlife Symposium in 2000.
Yes.
But we were still going in separate directions because it was, I believe I spoke and then Jurgen spoke on a projector. So we do talk quite a bit on different forums. And as for things to share at the moment, oh gosh, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Jurgen, what do you think?
Yeah, I think what is really valuable for me, talking to fellow astral travelers, and then some stuff you come out with that gets me thinking and trying to remembering and digging in and find there's a sort of consensus. And it also inspires me to go down another route, and follow up on what you have been saying. And so on. I think that's really, really valuable to have to have a discussion with people, and also to find out their different perspectives, different viewpoints in terms of where the other person is viewing it from, and that's really important because we have got to continuously expand our understanding, and not become sort of precious about our own view, and that's what I find really important, to actually exchange observations with other people, really.
There is a surprising amount of, again, to use the word consensus on the astral travel Facebook groups in particular. And it's interesting because there's not a lot of like disagreement about people's experiences. So sometimes you'll hear about people's experiences where you might have to take a step back and think, well, maybe this was more like a lucid dream or an inner world, not necessarily astral experience. But very often people will report very similar things, even up until the point where I have seen one person who was actually in my group, Afterlife Topics, recall going to a same location I had been to astrally, which is a hotel on the astral earth side, which is a zero gravity. And so you can go in and then you get your key and they say, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to go inside this area and all the gravity is going to disappear and you can float up the levels of the hotel and go to your room on the 8th floor and float around and fly around and have fun. And so a woman in my group had actually recalled the exact same place that she had been to as well. It appears to be a bit of a tourist attraction for people on that side. And so discover a lot of very interesting things like that. And
one thing I wanted to talk about with Jurgen was the sexy clock, which was in a place that was like a tourist attraction.
That's right, yeah.
You went to that's what you're talking about, Cyrus, like an astral realm, which is like a vacation where you can go and play. Is that what you're saying? It's like the hotel.
Well, I would say that it is literally a hotel that is in a part of the astral geography of the astral earth. So it could be in California, it could be out of nowhere, because my discovery is that the astral earth is a copy of this planet with the same geographic locations. But of course, it's quite a bit different from this realm. But there is places which are essentially the counterparts to this world. So I don't have like where this hotel was located, but other hotels and other locations that I can say is on Venice Boulevard in Los Angeles, except it's not ours, it's the flip side. So, and I think that people who cross over, they want to have a lot of exciting experiences as they recover their memories of life on that side. And so I've been to quite a few of these. One of the most predominant tourist attractions is actually related to Harry Potter types of things, which is very big in London. Not this London, but Astral London. They recreate Hogwarts, and they have like magic schools where you can go and cast real magic and real spells. They give you a wand, and you can, I don't remember all the Harry Potter magic words like Expelliarmus or whatever it is. You can learn to actually do all of that with a magic school setting. And that's just an example. The thing is on the astral side, there was an abundance of pop culture. So just about everything you think of that people like here, they're doing it, on an unimaginable scale on that side, whether it's their favorite video games or TV shows or movies, whatever you can think of. They're recreating it, they're role-playing it, they're making theme parks, all the stuff you can think of.
Okay, so this is explaining something that I read when I was in my 20s in the Seth books, and that was that every thought becomes a reality, at which I threw the book on the other side of the room because I couldn't understand how that was true. But, it's not a reality in this realm, but it becomes a reality in some other realm. And Esther Hicks has spoken about this in the Teachings of Abraham too, that when we imagine, we create these other realms, or we're drawing from those other realms, or maybe we're creating those other realms. Like she said something like Steven Spielberg has created many amazing non-physical realms because of all the creativity he does, directs and stuff.
Yes, and the people who see it and who see these films, they contribute to it to make it more real.
Like Avatar too, like there's so much. So there is a place, that's like Avatar. Like you're saying, Cyrus, is a place like Hogwarts. So there would be a world, a realm where you could go and have the Avatar experience, like the movie Avatar, right? There would
Yeah, I think, if there's a large fan base around media, then you can believe that there is most likely a sub-realm being created to copy that place.
Right.
And I think think it really varies because, like the magic school I went to in London, it wasn't like it was a sub-plane that you have to enter into. It's more like it's a building on the street and you can walk into it. But I think if you want to take it a step further and actually create the world, I think there are places where people can then access that. And maybe it even begins with a physical location. Like perhaps in London, there's a place people go to and they sit down on a chair. Maybe they can like immerse themselves the plane that they've created that is the Harry Potter world. Or maybe there's just a building or like a recreation of Hogwarts, like the castle, and then like the inside is perfectly matching how it is in the film. And then the people who go in there, they're helping create that reality. But I do think there's a little bit of organization to it, because they wouldn't want somebody going into the Hogwarts that they made and they want to just mess the whole place up. You know, we don't want like an internet troll equivalent to come in and kind of change things around, where we don't want, you know, maybe we don't want to see a Terminator walking around Hogwarts, you know, to keep it strictly the way it's supposed to be. So I do think there's also almost like an organizational or membership component to it as well. But that's just kind of a theory based on what I've seen.
So if our collective imagination is creating these other realms, then through, you know, especially through movies and stuff, a lot of the Hollywood movies are very violent and sort of negatively creating all those sort of, like, how many times has Hollywood destroyed the planet, you know, in their movies? Like, the planet's doomed, the aliens have come and, you know, smashed up the planet, or some tidal wave has, or some disaster has created it.
The thing is people would want to create that environment for it to be made. And I think most people watch an action movie and they don't have any desire to create that world. You know, they watch it for entertainment value, but they don't go to bed thinking, wow, if only I was in the world that was blown up. Yeah. I'm willing to bet that nobody is creating those worlds or recreating any elements of those stories on any astral environment.
Okay.
But there's a fandom, again, like Harry Potter or Avatar or Lord of the Rings. Like, you know, you can guarantee that the people are making astral theme parks about those places.
Yes.
Yeah. One thing I noticed is that a lot of these films, like horror films and things like that, they're actually inspired by visits of people going to these sub levels of reality. You know, these dark realms where the unconscious sort of is acting itself out, you know, and where unconscious energies are attracted to each other, and they're creating their own sub-worlds, you know, which can be very, very dark places. And also there may still be places which have actually had an existence in physical reality, where the energies are so strong, they're still acting out on these levels. And there are these very, very dark, sinister places where people, artists, film directors may sort of dip into and then come up with an idea to make a film about. You know, there was a very interesting guy in the early 1900s who wrote a series of books which was called The Ministry of Heaven. And he was, I think, an automatic writer. And he was describing these sub-levels, these very lower astral levels in great graphic detail, you know. And the feeling I had when I read these books, that he was actually taking the information directly from these levels, you know. And I had astral experience where I felt, yes, that this experience could be turned into a really good horror movie. You know, I
jump in real quick. I think that one of the best examples of this that I've seen is the video game series. It's called Silent Hill, and it's also accompanied by a film. I recommend the first film, not necessarily the second film. But it's horror. It's horror, but it's a highly accurate representation of going into lower negative astral domains. And the video games especially, it's literally an exploration of the lower astral. But through game, and it's considered among the scariest video games of all time. When the games were popular when I was a kid, you know, like 15 years ago, people would challenge themselves to play it because it was so frightening. But when you actually play the whole game through, you learn about a lot of like higher concepts as well, about so what we may call archangels overseeing lower astral dimensions, and very, very complex subjects. The game goes deeply into kind of Jewish mysticism and the Kabbalah, and it also is nature of how lower astral domains work. And it's amazing how much like esoteric knowledge I gained from playing those games when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. And the movie attempts to encapsulate some of that, the first movie, and I do recommend it. It does a fairly good job of it, and it's worth watching if somebody can stomach the level of horror that this media creates.
Well, yeah, I suppose it's like, wait, what do you want to create in this life? Do you want to be terrified? Do you want to create fear, or do you want to create love? It's a choice. There's no judgment. It's just an experience. But what do you want? But yeah. I know that a lot of adventurous young teenagers love that whole horror thing, like take me to a scary movie and frighten the pants off me. Yeah, that'd be great fun.
I think, Karen, you want to finish on a positive note, don't you?
Accentuate Positive is the name of the show. But anyway, I wanted to yeah, we've got to wrap it up pretty soon. That sexy clock was something that, do you want to talk about that a bit, Jurgen? You went to a realm where people were using art. They were creating their art, and you talked about how, do you want to talk about that? And
yes, basically, I went to a market stall, and there was a woman who collected all these artifacts which were created, and she was selling it on her market stall or giving it to people. And there were artists who supplied her with the artifacts she was offering to the public. And they were the most curious objects, and one of them was a skull which opened, and the clock was inside, and it had moving parts, and it was quite organic, and she liked it because it was a very good representation of the artist's mind, and she was sort of specializing in creating, in collecting works of art by different artists and offering it to other people. So I also found there are lots of shops on the astral level. When I went to the astral counterpart of Brighton, I found there were the lanes which we have in Brighton. They were full of incredibly beautiful artifacts created by artists and people, and you could spend hours walking around these lanes and admire the incredible creations people have. They're much more easy to create, and they're as they are, here, and so you have got an incredible variety of creativity on the next level, which can keep you sort of occupied for ages, really.
And I remember you said in the book that when someone bought the artifact or took it away, whether they were using money in that realm or not, you said something to her like, aren't you sad to see them go because they're so unique, these pieces? And she said, no, when someone takes one away, another one instantly kind of crops up or manifests to take its place or something.
Yes, there's a sort of matrix, an energetic imprint,
right,
left in the fabric, in the astral fabric, and so on. And it just needs a new focus to bring the object back into existence, which is already part of, there's already the blueprint. So it's only focus that is needed to make it sort of appear again.
Right. Absolutely. Focus is so important. And, the creative part of all of this, it just demonstrates how life is a blank canvas, although we come, to it with all our subconscious beliefs, but that we're painting our reality with these subconscious beliefs. And when we're aware of these beliefs, we can change them and we can paint anything we like. We can create any experience we want. We just look around the world. You say that there are infinite levels of astral experiences, just like we have infinite choice on what we perceive in this life, and therefore we have infinite experiences. Just look on this one world at the infinite experiences that are here to experience. Like, think about a life, like I think of Michael Jackson, the life that he created. He not only created this sort of tumultuous, although famous life as a child, with all the trauma that went with his family, but then when he grew up, he created this fantasy life, and he had like his like, it just seems unreal, that sort of life, to the normal, I suppose, working life. But he created it. You know, we can create any experience we want in this realm as well as in those realms. So life is a canvas. Okay, I'm going to finish it on this note. It's a quote out of your book. My mother made it clear to me that death is simply an extended form of gathering valuable information and experiences, and should never be seen as an end. There are new kinds of intensities in the afterlife which are largely absent on Earth, with greater diversification of emotions. So I guess it sounds like that it's sort of richer over there, more emotion. Would that be right?
Yes, it's there is a deeper level. As Cyrus earlier said, you have got an additional component of experience. You know, the knowing aspect, or not just sort of seeing it, but also understanding the background, or perceiving the mental aspect of it, wasn't it, Cyrus? You know, you have got a deeper sort of perception of what is experienced, and that makes it for a much richer life.
Yeah.
In lots of ways. You know, for example, if somebody tells you a story about their life, not only do you hear what he's saying or see what he's saying, you actually
Experience.
are there with him. You know? And you get a very, very good insight in what was his experience was all about and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a completely new game, really.
Which I have noticed that you're experiencing now in your physical body.
Yeah. Yes.
So, and I guess that's what I experience too. Like when someone tells me a story, I do this on the show, people talk about, I just go there and I'm in that experience with them. Like you're watching television and you just get swept away, you know, and you're in that time, in that life. Or reading a good book, you can just get, you can sort of transport yourself into that time and feel and smell and experience. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to do. So again, you've got that over there, but we can experience it here. So maybe learning about these astral experiences can give us a richer experience while we're in this experience.
Yes, it's not that different, really.
Cyrus, any last words, honey one?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I think that we've definitely covered all of it. I would like to say thank you, and I'm happy to be here and happy to have a chance to talk to you, Jurgen, as well. And this type of topic, you know, we could probably talk about for a very long time. There's so many different that can be unfolded and so many different subjects that can be spoken about. And that's all I have to say, I suppose. And thank you again.
Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, very good to see Cyrus in person, you know, and yeah, we already have good conversations on Facebook on his page, and the afterlife investigation of Victor and Wendy, you know, that's another good forum where we hang out. And yeah, it's great to talk to you both, and thanks for inviting me.
Thanks so much for coming on the show, Jurgen. It's been just amazing. We're coming up to nearly 2 hours now. I didn't mean for it to go so long, but I could talk to you all day. So thank you again for coming, and thanks, Cyrus, for jumping on and sharing your wisdom as well.
Thanks. You.
Another fascinating show. Wasn't that exciting? Had the two of them on today talking about all sorts of things, astral experiences. It's infinite what we can create. It's infinite what we can get up to when we're in body as well as out of body. Either we're dead out of body or we're alive out of body. Anyway, we're in and out all the time, simultaneously. We're out of body every night when we sleep, as Esther Hicks from the Teachings of Abraham says, that, you know, basically you're dead every night. You go, leave your body and fly around the universe. But do you remember? That's the part that I find the struggle, is remembering that in the morning. Where did I go? But the whole purpose of not remembering really is to keep focused here on what we're doing here. And so maybe when we know what we're doing here, and, you know, how we're affecting change and the shift, and how we're uplifting the collective consensus, the reality of this world, and we're happy to be here and happy to do that, maybe we remember more. I don't know. Everyone's got a different mandate, different mission in this life. And Jurgen and Cyrus have their experiences and we have our experiences. So it's all part of the plan, isn't it? All being orchestrated by our higher selves, or oversoul, or soul, or whatever you want to call it. Thanks again for listening to another show, Accentuating the Positive. We had another fascinating chat when I turned off the recording, the three of us, talking about different things. Jurgen was saying that he's moving more into being in the background, doing his work, his consciousness work, and not being so much of a spokesperson. So I think we'll be seeing less of him on videos, and he'll be more moving into his art, sort of demonstrating what he knows through his art. And check out his art. And if you want to buy the books and support the show, if you go to the link in the underneath, which goes to my website, you'll see more about Jurgen there, and all the links, all the affiliate links to the books, his books. If you want to buy his books, they're really, I tell you what, Vistas into Infinity is just a fascinating book. I'm reading at the moment. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So go to my website and buy the book there, and you support the show by doing that. So thanks again for joining me, and see you again next week for another fascinating show, accentuating the positive, uplifting the human consciousness in this world, and making a difference. I know that everyone that watches this show is doing your part in making a difference too. So contact me if you want to learn how you can make more of a difference. Thanks again. Bye for now.